Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's nice to see you today, this morning. And it's time to start, as Alan suggested. So the paper was presented by me and Wafaa. The keynote of this conference is green behavior. And according to what Alan wrote in the preface, we can read that the green behavior is a behavior that aims at minimizing harm to the environment. As long as we are talking about the environment, environmental pollution, the transport cannot be omitted. Because according to European Environment Agency, if nothing serious, nothing effective will be done in this area, it's predicted that up to 50% of total carbon dioxide will come from the transport. So that's why it should be of a special concern. It is of a special concern many times, but it only emphasizes this importance. Sustainable transport is pointed out to be the optimal, actually, and only solution for modern cities. And according to the principle of sustainable transport, the major mean of transportation should be public transport. And that's the theory. We can agree with this. The more what we partly affected last evening going to the dinner. But the present situations in many big cities, in many metropolises, is like this. The question is, where are the buses? Unfortunately, buses are somewhere in the middle, trapped in the traffic jams. And again, this is what we experienced last day. And of course, this situations is not welcome, and we should do many efforts, we should make many efforts to improve the situations, to make it look more or less like this, more like this probably. But it's not always possible, it's not always enough efforts, enough fundings from the local governments to make such a situations. Anyway, the main reason for not the best situations in the traffic is, of course, the number of vehicles on our streets. The motorization rate, as we can see in Poland, is presently is one of the highest within European countries. Bialystok maybe is not that bad, in Bialystok it's not that bad, but within the last 15 years, the rate according to personal cars has almost doubled. And it is more than doubled if we consider all motor vehicles. So Polish people do a lot to try to keep the same level as the rest of European countries. And we were so good that we are even almost at the first place, unfortunately. Presently, the situation in Western countries is opposite, and they are succeeded many times in reducing the number of vehicles. In Poland, unfortunately, we didn't reach this effectiveness yet. But the awareness is growing up happily. So there are many ways, there are many possibilities to improve the traffic, the public transport effectiveness, at least in theory. The theory is always easier to express than to implement in practice. The main idea is that we should encourage to change all individuals' communication habits. The way we travel, the way we want to travel, although it's not always the most convenient, but as long as we are talking about sustainability, we should think also about the next generations. Within all those ways of improvement, presently the most commonly met solutions are, as we can see, these are the conversion of road space to dedicated public transport lanes, bus, trams lanes, and streets, separated bus lanes, and bus priority in traffic signalizations, and also the solutions related to intelligent transport solutions. Possible achievements that we can reach, that we try to achieve from implementing different prioritizations towards public transport are increase of journey speed, lowering of time loss, increase of reliability, improve accessibility for all of users, and also the limitation of traffic flow and intensity, which is actually the crucial issue in aspect of effectiveness of public transport, especially in city centers, because city centers are the areas which suffer the most from the traffic. If we talk about the effectiveness of traveling, not only public transport, but also if we think about ourselves in cars. When we are in the cars, the city centers are the most heavy, the most difficult area to go through because of the number of vehicles. Presently, in Edinburgh, there are traffic management systems that enhance public transport. There are separated bus lanes, and also there are streets dedicated only for public transport. In Bialystok, presently, we have two main corridors with separated bus lines, and actually, since this Monday, the traffic management system should be started, and as far as I know, it has started. The effectiveness of the system, maybe next year I could present you some results, but it just has started. About the area and the methodology, the best way to compare the effectiveness of any improvements towards, for example, public transport are the measurements before and after implementation. But in many times it's impossible or it's hard to achieve such results. So another way to come for the comparison is the compartment of, for example, the corridor with bus lane with the similar corridor in geometric characteristic in traffic, but without a bus priority. So this is the way that we approach in our paper. And in Edinburgh, there are two corridors chosen for the measurements. One line in the city center with the separated bus line. This picture is for this actually map. And the other one, corridor situated a little bit away from the city center with no bus lane. The measurements and the results we can see in here. The measurements were taken during peak times and off-peak times, and also before the peak time has started. As we can see, there are no high difference, or maybe there are no difference at all between the average journey speed during the morning peak and off-peak time, as long as we consider bus line corridors, and the similar situation is in case of the corridor with no bus line. But if we consider the traffic, when the traffic conditions is, when the traffic intensity is low, the average journey speed is visibly distinctly higher when compared to the other times of the day. A little bit different situation is in case of the street dedicated only for the buses. In this case, during the peak hours, the number of buses is really high, and the average speed is maybe it's not high. But as long as we consider the other conditions during off-peak hours, we can see that the average speed is distinctly higher, and the level of this speed is pretty good. In Bialystok, for consideration, two main corridors are situated in city centers, going from north to south and from west to east. And all of these corridors, all of these streets are mainly dual carriageway streets, except of this section. This section is a single carriageway with a separated bus line. And considering the results achieved for the corridor going from north to south, we can see that there is a difference in average speed between the morning peak and off-peak hours, but there are no distinct differences between off-peak hours and the average speed that was achieved during the afternoon peak hours. The differences that we can see between these speeds and these speeds mainly comes from the coordination of junctions with traffic signalizations, because along this corridor, and also this one, all signalized junctions can work under coordination, assuming that there is a adequately high level of traffic on the streets. The level is set pretty high, so it's not always working. It works basically during the peak hours, but as we can see in these results, during the afternoon peak hours, probably it wasn't working. Considering the results achieved for the corridor from west to east, the tendency is quite similar, although the values of average speeds are a little higher. And again, the highest values were achieved for the morning peak hours, and the lowest were for the afternoon peak hours. Again, probably because of the functionality of the coordination on the junctions. To compare the average speeds achieved on the corridors with the bus lines, some other sections with no bus lines were chosen for the comparisons, and there were section streets dual carriageway, these two, and the rest was a single carriageway. The results that were achieved we can see in here, and the average speeds, as we can see, achieved for the corridors with bus lanes during the peak hour, the level of the speeds is quite high, and it's comparable with the average speeds of the other sections. These two sections are the dual carriageway streets, for example, operating outside the city center. So the traffic conditions on those streets lying outside the city centers is relatively lower than on the streets lying in the city centers, but the average speeds remain on the similar level, which means that the corridors with bus lanes, they operate pretty effective. During peak hours, the differences are a little higher between those corridors lying outside the city center and within the city centers. Again, mostly probably this is because of the coordination, working or not. Comparing results of average speeds achieved for Bialystok and for Edinburgh, a little higher values were achieved for Bialystok. This is for Edinburgh corridor with bus lane and similar corridor in Bialystok. The difference is 3 kilometers is pretty much, actually, when we consider public transport average speeds. The similar tendency, but with the lower differences, were achieved for the corridors during off-peak hours. But in each case, the average speeds in Bialystok were on a higher level when compared to the Edinburgh, mostly because of the traffic intensity. In Edinburgh, the traffic intensity in the city center especially is higher than in Bialystok. And also because of the effectiveness of the traffic management systems. These traffic management systems are effective, but only up to a certain level of traffic conditions. When the traffic conditions are high enough, no traffic management system can help. So that's why bus lines, as long as we try to incorporate bus lines, separated bus lines, even together with the traffic management systems, we also should try to reduce the number of vehicles entering the city center. Without that, the effectiveness will be always limited until a certain level. Another aspect related to effectiveness and operational of public transport is reliability, and reliability is influenced by the fluency of movement. And what the situation is if we consider the corridors with the bus lines. Here we can see some extremes achieved from during the peak hours and during off-peak hours. The differences in journey time are, as we can see in percentage, are not high. This is for the corridor going from west to south. Another situation, another corridor going from north to south. the difference is higher, but still remain on a low level. The differences in the maximum and minimum travel journey time is 16%. But when we consider the situation on a city, on the streets, on the corridors without bus lanes, we can see that in case of a corridor lying very close to the corridor going from west to south, the difference in the journey time is almost is more than 50%. The cause for this are, of course, the stops, not only bus stops, but also the stops forced by the traffic conditions, by the accessibility to the streets. And we can see that the number of stops when the bus is waiting for the possibility of going through the junction can be long. And let's take a look in here. Here we can see that, it wasn't this. Here we can see when we have the corridor with the bus lane, the stops are mainly, the stops basically mainly only at the bus stops. In cases of the corridors with no bus lanes, these stops occur also or mainly in the vicinity of junctions, and another corridor which is situated not far away from the city center. We can see the corridor wasn't, the length of the corridor wasn't long, but the differences in the journey time is more than 100%. So here we can see the possible improvements arising from the existence of the bus lanes. And conclusions. Conclusions, all of you can find in the proceedings, but instead of the typical conclusions, I would like to present a picture that I found not long ago. The picture was taken in Krakow, actually. There was a project related to the assessment of effectiveness of public transport. And what is the idea of this picture? Let's imagine the number of people about equal to the capacity of a typical bus. It's about 160 people. The average pulling of a car in Poland, passenger car, is about 1.4 person per car. So the equivalent number of vehicles needed to carry the same number of people that can be carried by the bus is about 120 passenger cars. We can see there are 5 lines of these cars, and the length of this queue is about 120 meters. So I think this reflects very well the possibility, the potential lying in the public transport and the public transport prioritization. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that very interesting presentation. Is there some questions?
Just taking your last point, you gave the average speeds of travel, but were those for all vehicles or for buses? Because when you've got the bus lane, then obviously the buses travel much faster, and therefore the carrying capacity of that road is much higher than if you don't have a bus lane. So I just wondered what your figures showed. Were they all average speeds of all vehicles?
Like this?
All of these ones, yeah, that's for all vehicles?
Yes.
So if you split that up into buses and cars, and then did your calculation where the buses have a much higher carrying capacity, much more people are in the buses, would you get a different measurement then? You'd actually get the number of people, the time it takes for people to travel that distance would be much higher where there was a bus lane, I would think. Because this is for cars, this is suitable for cars, but in fact, if we're concerned with people moving along that stretch of road, you would need to recalculate.
Yeah, but this average speed, including the journey time and also the time needed for people to get on the bus.
Yeah, but is that's for cars and buses, or only for buses?
Only for buses.
This is only for the bus passenger?
Yes, this is only for buses.
Yeah, oh, okay. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm becoming fascinating of this transportation track because every year we hear comparison with Delhi. My question is, and also to Wafaa, when it comes to sustainability, and I face this question every time, when you go to decision maker, they need to see something in reality. For example, the issue is public. I believe we have to use the buses because this is very well argued for the last, I don't know, 10, 15 years. But the question ordinary people will say to you, so where I work, we are working outside town, so we have like 6, 7 miles, I think, to drive. Most people, even we have people who are even campaigners for Greenpeace and so on, they will say to you, the bus is not convenient. This is a question many people, they keep saying, convenience. So in all the research I have seen, the issue of convenience for people is not being addressed quite seriously in the research. I tell you why. Many people I know, in the department, we have 2 administrators. The only way they can come in the morning, they have to drive because they have to drop their daughters in some school in their way to university. Secondly, about convenience, when you finish the university, you might need to stop doing shopping. Life has become very hectic. So it's not like the smooth life we used to have in the past, particularly in the UK. I'm just talking from the UK perspective. Maybe people in other countries. So you do many things at the same time. Or you have to rush, you finish your lecture by 2 o'clock, you have to rush to pick your whatever. That's the second option. The third one, when you go to university, in most of the times, you're either carrying things, bringing things back. People, they find the buses, again, they are not very convenient in that. The fourth one I found also in Brighton for 11 years now. Public transport, people finding it is getting more cleanness, many people, you're sitting on the seat, you have chewing gum coming to you. So there's issue about remaining of beer cans from last night, or is this issue that because it costs too much money to make the bus clean, not about comfort of cleaning, but more of things you might disturb you. So there's so many issues with convenience which stop people. They know they like to care about the environment, but they cannot use the bus. So where in the research this has been addressed? This is quite important factor I think need to be addressed.
That's right, that's very important, and unfortunately our convenience is not easy, is maybe the main obstacle to convince people to change the way they travel. Of course, it's easier, especially maybe not especially in Poland, but after the political change started from the beginning of the 90s in Poland, when the car was more easily achievable for normal people, for typical people, people wanted probably until today, they prefer to spend even 1 hour standing in a traffic jam, but in their own car, instead of being in a crowded bus. That's the problem, and that's the main idea that we should try to change our habits. Behavior, yes, that's the main problem. But as long as we agree with standing in the traffic jams, no matter 1 hour, 2 hours, during the peak, morning peak, afternoon peak hours, it won't be easy to convince people for changing the way they travel, unless we will use more strict measures like the closure, the areas of the city, like the city center, the smaller or the bigger, and the people have no choice and they will have to use the public transport. But this is the problem, and it's not easy to overcome this. We have to work on people behavior right from the beginning, from the school, from the primary school, to present him the situation, to explain them that if we don't want to do anything towards to reduce the number of vehicles in the city center, we will spend, it will be not possible to travel freely. It's not possible to travel freely at the moment, and we need to remember that the motorization rate is still going up. The number of vehicles is going up. It's not going down. So as long as we will not change this, we will not change distinctly the conditions in city centers, because mainly we are talking about the city centers. Of course, we need cars to go from one place to another within the city center, including shopping, for example. It's not easy to go on the streets with carrying the bags. That's right. But it's all about the convenience. People change your manner. Think about, don't go by yourself also. The last slide, don't go by yourself because the pooling is lower than two persons per car. So we should try, it's being done to convince people to travel with more persons in one car. This will also reduce the number of cars within the city center, and if it's achieved, it will be easier for everyone. It will be easier for buses, it will be easier for other users.
I think you're very right, thank you. I think, well, actually, in my opinion, the last picture and all these arguments, we should direct to the planners and the engineers and the city councils, not to people. Because whatever we say to people, people will use the better option for them. If the car is more convenient and cheaper in terms of generalized cost, they will use the car no matter what we say. We should talk to the decision makers and policy people in the city. Design the city for the bus, not for the car. So we should show this picture to the transport planners and city council and say to them, the bus is better than the car for you. So please design your city for people to use the bus. As you said, Robert, people go shopping. You can't expect people to go shopping on the bus because they're going to carry their luggage, etc. The car is still cheaper and more convenient for people, and that's why we use it. We need to design and price our systems to encourage people to use the buses by choice, not by force. They are not going to change their behavior for the sake of the sustainability and development and our name and us. They're going to change their behavior only if they have benefit in changing behavior. And I think that is a message we would like to send to the cities. Cities usually implement pricing, for example, to raise revenues, not for anything else. Thank you.
Sorry,
we will continue, so you, okay.